Hello there, I'm Manila Chan. You're watching In Question, broadcasting live from RT America National Headquarters in Washington, D.C. Here are the stories we're working on for you today. A weekend of family fun turned into horror. 3 people, including a 6-year-old boy, killed in a grisly mass shooting over in Northern California. We're going to bring you the latest out of that. Plus, almost a week since Puerto Rico's governor announced he'd resign, his successor is now saying she doesn't want the job. We're going to explain that story. And finally, President Trump stoking widespread anger for his weekend comments on a certain U.S. city nearby. Well, we'll tell you what he said. All right, it's time now to boost your news IQ. Over to the ongoing investigation in California. Today, authorities are searching for answers after someone shot 3 people dead and injured almost a dozen others on Sunday evening. It all happened as crowds gathered for the annual Gilroy Garlic Festival about 4 hours north of Los Angeles. At this hour, police say the shooter is also dead. Still, though, no motive known. And a possible second suspect might be on the loose. RT's Natasha Sweet has the details.
Yeah, Manila, residents in the small town of Gilroy remain in shock as 3 victims were killed Sunday at the annual Garlic Festival. And according to authorities, at this point, they say the shooting appears to be random. In this cell phone video, you can hear the gunshots firing off Sunday at the Gilroy Garlic Festival. Some witnesses saying at first they thought it was fireworks. 3 victims were killed by the shooter's gunfire. The suspect, identified as 19-year-old Santino William Legan, was killed by police within minutes of shots being fired. At least 12 were hospitalized as thousands ran out of the venue in sheer panic.
And we just sat at somebody's house for the longest time, and then I had my husband come and get us. But yeah, there was people everywhere, all over. There was no set place that they went. They just got out of the...
Among the killed was 6-year-old Steven Romero. Just last month, the family was celebrating his birthday at Legoland here in Southern California. Now, police say the suspect came in through a creek and broke his way into the festival.
They used some sort of a tool to cut through the fence to be able to gain access through the secure fence line, and that's how they got into the festival area itself.
Now, Gilroy is a small town about 80 miles southeast of San Francisco with only 50,000 residents. Well, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of this event, it attracts nearly 100,000 people every year, double the size of its residents. The 3-day event features food, cooking competitions, and music. And it's been a tradition for many families as it's been happening for 40 years. Now, the police chief did say, based on eyewitness accounts, that there was a second individual involved in some way. They're still trying to determine the role of the other potential suspect.
Now to the ongoing situation in Puerto Rico. The woman next in line to take over as governor now says she doesn't want the job. It's the latest in the political drama and controversy gripping the island. RT correspondent John Huddy just got back from San Juan and has the latest.
Wanda Vasquez, Puerto Rico's Secretary of Justice, says she doesn't want the job. That could be left vacant if a successor isn't appointed when Governor Ricardo Rossello's resignation takes effect on Friday. He resigned, of course, as we reported, Wednesday after nearly 2 weeks of protests and demonstrations following that messaging scandal that resulted really in the resignation of not only Rosello, but many of his top aides and several other high-ranking public officials, including Puerto Rico's Secretary of State, Luis Rivera Marin, who would have been second in line to take over as governor. As we saw in San Juan during the demonstrations leading up to Rosello's resignation, people were chanting. It was almost that festival atmosphere, as I described when I was on the ground there. But people were chanting, Ricky renuncia. That was really the main chant, Ricky resign. Well, after he announced his resignation last week, the chants and messages along in all the festivities and protests turned to Wanda renuncia, Wanda resign. Many Puerto Ricans contend that she's too closely aligned with Rosselló. Vasquez, just some background here, became Secretary of Justice in January 2017 and has been dogged herself by corruption allegations and critics who contend that she didn't really do enough to investigate questions about things like financial malfeasance, embezzlement, allegations over aid distribution after Hurricane Maria, something she's adamantly denied. It's unclear at this point if she will resign or if she will submit to Puerto Rico's constitutional requirements of taking over as interim governor. She posted a tweet yesterday, which was the last we've heard from her thus far, which translates, I'll translate it to English. It says, "I reiterate, I have no interest in occupying the position of governor. I hope that the governor identifies and submits a candidate for the position of Secretary of State before August 2nd, as I have told him so." Now, we're told by political analysts and our sources in Puerto Rico that if Vasquez were to take over as governor, it would likely trigger another eruption of protests and demonstrations and potential clashes like we've seen between protesters and police. So what's the option if Vasquez, or what are the options anyway, if Vasquez doesn't take office? Well, it would then fall to the Secretary of Treasury in Puerto Rico, who's only, get this, 31 years old, and the minimum age by law there to become governor is 35, so he's out. That means the next in line would be the Secretary of Education, who's only been on the job for a few months. So, you know, bottom line here, Manila, time is clearly of the essence in Puerto Rico, where the political drama continues to unfold and the fate of the island's political system remains very much in question. Manila, back to you.
Certainly a lot of moving parts. John Huddy, glad to see you back in studio. Thank you. All right, as John just explained, Puerto Ricans remain fiercely against Governor Ricardo Rosselló's replacement, Secretary of Justice Wanda Vasquez. She's now saying she doesn't want the job, but some people are now concerned the U.S. government will use this moment to further dictate to the island. Joining us to break down what's next for Puerto Rico is Mr. Daniel Vila. He is organized on Puerto Rico and in New York. He's a member of La Voz Latina Collective, a program on New York's WBAI Pacifica radio station, and recently ran for Congress twice over in Harlem. Good to see you, Daniel. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you. So you have spent decades organizing on the island and here stateside. What makes this moment different? If we were creating a manual for, you know, successful movements like this, what would you say allowed Puerto Ricans to be able to successfully and peacefully, mind you, oust Rosselló?
Yeah, this is incredible, and it really has no parallel in the history of Puerto Rico. Frankly, it is the first time in the history, and I was very active in Puerto Rico. I was a member of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, and we mobilized tens of thousands of people. I was active with labor in Puerto Rico, where the different unions and the general strikes that were held in Puerto Rico, I helped to mobilize also for those. Hundreds of thousands of people came out. But this has no parallel. There was a demonstration last week of over 500,000 people. Some of the corporate press in Puerto Rico admits that there was close to 1 million people. And these are young people. There's another very interesting element. Young people, which a lot of older people have been criticizing, saying that they were alienated, disconnected from reality because of the cell phones and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that it was these people who were out on the street. They realized that what happens in Puerto Rico depends on them, that the future is theirs and they should control it.
And how do you think these young people made this happen peacefully?
Yes, that's the incredible thing. It was not completely peaceful because the police was very aggressive, as many people, millions of people saw throughout the world, throwing gas and beating people up and just taking over and dispersing people for no reason. But they were very peaceful in terms of their protests. And the reason this happened is because they had a sense of security. They were just so sure, positive, that they could get rid of the governor.
So the voice of the people rang louder than the governor's, obviously. So I want to move on here to a publication from The Intercept. They published a piece last week that asserts that Promesa, the board put in place to set up this bankruptcy-like procedure, might actually exploit this moment to further its reach there. What do you make of that?
Well, yes, the Fiscal Control Board, which is called by Puerto Ricans generally as the Dictatorial Control Board, and which incidentally even pro-statehood governor, outgoing Governor Rosselló was opposed to it, and he wrote various bad comments about the board on his Telegram chat. What is going to happen now, undoubtedly what you say is true. The Fiscal Control Board which already has total control over the country because it has more power than the governor, the legislature, and the courts, but now it will try to take over that vacuum and do whatever it wants, which is basically the bidding of Wall Street.
And another thing here that I found a little bit unusual, and we've discussed in some of our editorial meetings, was can you discuss with us the significance of the timing of there's some 6 people, including 2 Puerto Rican officials, that were arrested, and then suddenly these chats were leaked. Could this possibly be a setup for more overwhelming U.S. takeover, or is there a people's movement that's larger at this point in Puerto Rico?
Well, the U.S. government cannot take over Puerto Rico anymore. Puerto Rico was invaded by the United States on July 25, 1898, and the United States Congress has direct control over everything in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
There is a facade, there is an illusion, a lie that Puerto Rico is a free associated state, called in Spanish Estado Libre Asociado, Commonwealth in English. It is false. Puerto Rico is a complete 100% colony of the United States. Now, what we do believe will happen within the next period, hopefully, is that people will realize that all of these problems that we have presently in Puerto Rico are as a result of that colonial status. And that's the next major hurdle. Hopefully, people will move from merely opposing these colonial governors or corrupt persons and institutions, and from fighting against the Fiscal Control Board and moving towards total independence. Only total independence can solve the problems of Puerto Rico. And incidentally, there is only one point in which we that favor independence and also socialism for Puerto Rico are in agreement with President Trump. That is, Trump came out very powerfully criticizing the governor as being corrupt. And he is absolutely right. And there, we agree with him. And we think that the next step, if he wants to get rid of corrupt governors in Puerto Rico, is to take hands off of Puerto Rico, let Puerto Rico be as an independent country, and that way we could both work as partners internationally on the international arena as a sovereign, independent country.
Certainly very interesting to see what's happening in Puerto Rico now. Mr. Daniel Vila, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
President Donald Trump has deepened a feud in Washington over allegations of racism after a series of tweets aimed at African-American Congressman Elijah Cummings. Now, over the weekend, Trump attacked Cummings, describing his black majority districts of Baltimore, Maryland, as a disgusting, rat-infested mess. With the fallout that's followed, RT's Ashley Banks is on the ground in Baltimore with more to this. Ashley.
That's right, Manila. I'm here at the new Shiloh Baptist Church located in Baltimore, Maryland, where the Reverend Al Sharpton led a press conference here not too long ago in regards to President Trump's remarks over the weekend. Now, on Sharpton, he said that President Trump attacks everyone, that he can't handle criticism, and that he's just completely immature. Now, over the weekend, Trump called Baltimore a very dangerous, filthy city that no human being would ever want to live in. He took to Twitter on Saturday saying, quote, as proven last week during a congressional tour, the border is clean, efficient, and well run. Just very crowded. The Cumming district is a disgusting rat and rodent infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could help clean up this very dangerous and filthy place. Now, Trump's attack, it came after U.S. Representative for Maryland's 7th Congressional District, Elijah Cummings, criticized the conditions at the U.S.-Mexico border. He said Homeland Security did a better job tracking immigrants' personal property than their children, adding these people are human beings and should be treated better.
Separating children from their mothers and fathers causes damage that may endure for a lifetime. Let me let that sink in. In other words, until they die. The Trump administration adopted this child separation policy intentionally, purposefully, as a tactic to deter people from coming to the United States and seeking asylum.
Many people took to Twitter to fire back at Trump for attacking Baltimore. Baltimore Mayor Bernard C. Jack Young said, quote, Mr. Trump's rhetoric is hurtful and dangerous to the people he's sworn to represent. As the mayor of Baltimore, I won't stand for anyone, not even the alleged leader of the free world. Mr. Trump, you are a disappointment to the people of Baltimore, our country, and to the world. Now, April Ryan, the White House correspondent, CNN political analyst, and a Baltimore native took to Twitter stating, Dear Donald Trump, believe it or not, you're supposed to be president of the United States to all Americans, even those in Baltimore, a city where your son-in-law Jared Kushner owns housing projects. And CNN anchor Victor Blackwell, another Baltimore native, cried during a live broadcast over Trump's comments, saying Trump has used the word infested to criticize lawmakers before. Adding, quote, Donald Trump has tweeted more than 43,000 times. He's insulted thousands of people, many different types of people. But when he tweets about infestation, it's about black and brown people. The Baltimore Sun editorial board published an op-ed titled, Better to have a few rats than to be one. The editorial board addressed the president directly, saying, quote, the guy who insisted there are good people among murderous neo-Nazis, that he's still not fooling most Americans into believing he's even slightly competent in his current post. Better to have some vermin living in your neighborhood than to be one. The editorial board mentioned the White House has far more power to affect change in Baltimore than any single member of Congress. Reporting in Baltimore, Ashley Banks, RT.
All right, still to come, we're going to head over to Austria, where world leaders have gathered over the weekend to discuss saving the Iran nuclear deal. We've got a full report in just 2 minutes. Plus, we will get the highlights coming out of Major League Soccer coming up next. Stay tuned.
Russian Airlines.
In a world of fake partisan news, lies, and conspiracy,
it's time to wake up, to dig deeper, to hit the stories that mainstream media refuses to tell. More than ever, we need to be smarter. We need to stop slamming the door on the facts and shouting past each other. It's time for critical thinking. It's time to fight for the middle, for the truth. The time is now for watching closer, for watching the Hawks.
I've seen the horrors that arise when money and evil combine. Corporate criminals who trash countless lives to add just one more dollar to their billions. They threaten, they bribe, they'll do anything to keep their crimes in the dark. But the people they've hurt are demanding justice. Their stories need to be told on America's Lawyer.
There's so much going on in the world, don't you think? When's the last time you had a real bird's eye view of things? Shouldn't the news be more than just hours of bickering? Give me 30 minutes, and I'll take you across the globe. Now, with ongoing nuclear tensions between world powers, over the weekend, Iran and the remaining JCPOA members held an emergency talk in Austria. But just how successful were those talks, and what's next for Iran? RT correspondent Saya Tavenger has the story.
Yes, diplomats from Iran, Germany, France, Britain, China, Russia, and the European Union met in Vienna on Sunday in what they called an emergency meeting to try to salvage the 2015 nuclear agreement. Now, there seems to be some positive outcome coming from the meeting, as the aim of the emergency talks was also to ease recent tensions. The Iranians, in fact, even called the meeting constructive.
The both sides, as I said, had complaints about each other. We raised this today. I think the atmosphere was constructive and the discussions were good. I cannot say that we resolved everything, but I can say that there are lots of commitments to the JCPOA and its survival.
Now, this wasn't the only surprise coming out of the meeting, as the head of the Chinese delegation expressed strong opposition to UN sanctions and vowed to continue normal trade and oil relations with Iran.
All sides have expressed their strong opposition against the U.S. unilateral imposition of sanctions, especially their extraterritorial application of these sanctions. And they have also expressed support and appreciation for China's efforts to implement the JCPOA, in particular China's efforts to maintain normal trade and oil relations with Iran.
In addition to trade with China, Iran is especially interested in beginning with what they're calling a barter-type system set up by the Europeans that would allow the various country businesses to trade with Tehran without violating the U.S. sanctions. And after Sunday's meeting, there was also a general agreement to organize a higher-level meeting of foreign ministers soon, though no date has been set. Also, hours before the talks, the U.S. and Israel said they tested a defense missile system in Alaska. The goal is to intercept long-range missiles from Iran, like the one test-fired by Iran just last week. Now, the big picture here is that the United Nations nuclear watchdog confirmed this month that Iran has followed through on its threat to enrich uranium beyond the limit set under the 2015 nuclear deal. Also, in the past 2 months, Iran and its allies have been accused by Washington for attacks on 6 oil tankers, shooting down 2 U.S. drones and striking Saudi oil infrastructure. So Iran's recent moves, which Tehran's defends as acceptable after the U.S. withdrawal, are seen as a way to force other countries to openly confront the sanctions. At the same time, Europe is under pressure from the U.S. to abandon the Iran nuclear agreement entirely, and is also being squeezed by Iran to offset the ever-crippling effects of the U.S. economic sanctions. So once again, there's a wait-and-see situation from all sides. Reporting live from the newsroom, Syed Havinger.
And happening today, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin will embark on a trip to China to resume trade talks between both nations. The discussions are expected to take place starting tomorrow. They'll come amid an array of disputes that has grown to include tensions over Huawei. Chinese leaders are resisting U.S. pressure to roll back plans for government-led development of industry leaders in robotics, AI, and more. Washington complains those efforts depend on stealing or pressuring foreign companies to hand over technology. And other headlines from around the country, Dan Coats will step down as National Intelligence Director. Coats submitted his letter to the president on Sunday saying he's ready to move on to the next chapter of his life. The former Republican senator from Indiana took office back in 2017. His last day will be August 15th. Following the news, President Trump took to Twitter, thanking Coats for his service. Already, he's nominated Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe as the successor. And over now to the world of sports with Regina Ham sitting in for Steve Christakos over in Sports HQ. Regina, MLS gearing up for all its star break, but some teams are kind of struggling. What happened?
Some teams, they always say second half of the season after the All-Star break banner is board, but some of these teams are just falling apart. The last few games before this All-Star break, though, kicked off, and the New York Red Bulls found themselves on the wrong side of the game. Let's waste no time. First opportunity here in New York. Cross from Mark Zhakowski to Brian White. White header past Eloy Room for the first blood, 14th minute, and 8th goal of the season for him. The replay look, and you just see that the dribble is open from Zhakowski and knows how to use it from the header from White. Columbus, though, wasting no time in answering. The Red Bulls, 16th minute, Luis Argudo in a difficult angle makes it work, though. Right-footed shot to the corner of the net, leveling that game at 1. Closer look from the header from Jazi Zardes to Argudo, and he just really knows how to work it. The Red Bulls just no defense. Closing out the first half in stoppage time, though, Columbus again on the attack, and Pedro Santos' left-footed shot finds the net for the goal. Argudo on that assist. And penalties by Columbus. Second half, New York awarded the PK. Daniel Daniel Royer with that bomb in the upper right for the equalizer. It's a clean shot, and room makes just too much room. 20 minutes of a tie, and Columbus has had enough. Shot by Zardes, but blocked by New York. Again finds Santos, and that shot gives the Crew the lead. The defense just not there from New York. They failed, and Zardes right here shows you that he just needs to hand the ball to Santos for that being his second goal of the night. New York never recovered and fell to Columbus 3-2 at home, making it their first home loss since May 8th and the second win on the road for the Crew. The Pan American Games are well underway in Peru, and the American ladies made their athletic gymnastics debut at the event. The U.S. squad put Kara Eaker on the beam, and her triple flip gorgeous. And this dismount here into a double back spring and a perfect landing over on the bars. You see here that Riley Kasker is just making it look so simple. A flawless straddle to Kefs, perfecting the pike on the bar before moving to the next one. Her final 3 flips over the bar, backward giant with a half turn, a back flip, triple tuck launch right here, earning the U.S. squad a perfect 10 and find themselves with the gold. Over on women's weightlifting, though, it was an emotional one. Venezuela's Genesis Rodriguez cleaning 121 pounds, just struggling at the moment to get that over her head. But as a powerlifter, she powered through and managed to take home the gold for her country. And there's so much emotion out of her. There are tears. You know, I'm feeling a little tears myself. But we still have men's mountain biking to go. Ended with a tight competition. And it was really from the start, the pack breaking away during the rough terrain portion. But Mexico's Jose Yohoya ahead of his closest competitor. Yohoya posted the gold medal performance in this individual event, with silver going to Brazil's Enrique da Silva. And professional gymnasts, you know, they do have the balance beam, but at the annual Santa Ana Festival, the main activity is really more of an amateur crowd. Dozens of locals came to the port of Roquetas de Mar to attempt the tradition of running down this greased-up pole to get the Spanish flag. While it sounds like a bit of a bizarre thing, the tradition actually stems from a game fishermen used to play and is now a local competition. A cool $440 US are on the line for the Spanish flag and $220 for the Andalusian flag. The 19-foot pole made it hard for anybody to really get a grip, no matter how hard they tried, but it was really entertaining for the hundreds of spectators. Competitors fell in the water, and this year featured a 100% failure rate, making organizers very happy. They didn't have to pay out any prize money. And in Manila, speaking of going back to the MLS All-Star Game, Steve Christakis is actually in Orlando. We get to hear from him tomorrow about all the activities between the All-Stars and Atletico Madrid, so that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I heard maybe David Beckham was going to be there.
You know, all the ladies that are watching are going to go gaga for David Beckham.
Now, Steve, make sure you talk to Beckham if he's there. He's expanding a team, right?
He does. He has Inter Miami FC is going to be his team. So, you know, he's going to be a new entry into the MLS, but everybody remembers him from his days playing in England.
Well, get cozy in Florida, Beckham, just saying. All right. Thanks for that, Regina. And that's it for now, guys. Come back tomorrow starting at noon for more news. But in the meantime, make sure you download Pluto TV, the app. We're on channel 279. And stream us 24/7 on YouTube. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, InQuestionRT. Follow me on Twitter at Manila Chan. Remember to question more and come back tomorrow starting at noon.
Aeroflot, Russian Airlines.